Yay, thank you.
All right, thanks, Ken. I thought I would talk a little bit about what was happening in 2024. It seemed like astronomy-wise, it was a pretty active year. There were lots of things happening, and what I'll talk about is just some of the events that I had photographed. If you haven't seen my pictures, I do a lot of mostly landscape style photos where I shoot pretty wide angle with digital cameras. And so all of these events that I photographed were could be seen with the naked eye. It was something that you could actually you can go out and see and experience. And for me, of course, it was a pretty, and I think for a lot of people here, it was a pretty eventful year. I think a lot of things happening, a lot of things that you could see within a relatively close distance in New York City, if not or New York, Long Island area, or if not too far away. So I'll start with the April 8th eclipse, and I think for a lot of people, there are a lot of changes going on in your eclipse plans. Here I am with some friends from the AAA, Marcy, Keith, and John, and this is already our plan B. So Marcy and I and Keith had planned to be in Texas, near Fredericksburg, Texas. And so, like everybody else, we saw the forecast and all the clouds heading to Texas. So we headed to upstate New York, in Watertown. We met there. John and his family were going to be in Niagara Falls, so he met us in Watertown. And so this is April 7th, the day before the eclipse, and we're already planning Plan C because we noticed that part of New York State clouds were coming in. So Marcy, Keith, and I ended up in a place called Magog, Quebec, which is near Sherbrooke in southern Quebec, pretty close to the Vermont border. So as you can see, we were on this Lake Memphremagog, which is a very, very long lake. It goes sort of from Canada, and it goes across the border into Vermont. So I know a lot of people that I had spoken to were actually in Newport, Vermont, which is on this very southern end of the same lake. So a few of us were basically on the same lake, and it was a beautiful place for an eclipse. Of course, it was clear, but also the setting was nice. We were at this beachfront park where there was a fair number of people, but it wasn't so crowded as to make it uncomfortable. And I think everybody was having a great time there. The thing that really fascinated me about the eclipse was the amount of prominences that you could see during certain phases of the eclipse. Totality, of course, was great and it was long, but I think especially this huge prominence right about the 7 o'clock position, which you could see during totality with just your naked eye. I remember seeing it, and we were just had no idea what we were looking at. So that, to me, that was quite bizarre. And I think that the eclipse kind of lent itself to a lot of different kinds of photos. I put together a sequence here showing the sequence of the different phases of the eclipse. For me, the pictures that I liked a lot were the more wider angle pictures. I think showing the whole scene, and I think showing the kind of lakefront scene. This is the second camera that I had on a tripod that was a wide angle that I was shooting a sequence of the eclipse as it was going on. And then this is a composite of 25 different frames that I put together. The picture that I ended up liking the best, though, was just I had a camera around my neck with a wide angle lens, and I had planned to take some sort of I think a wide angle shot during the eclipse. I didn't know exactly how it was going to turn out. Oops. But I took this one and I liked it quite a bit, and I think other people liked it. It turned out to be the NASA astronomy picture of the day for April 9th. So that was I was pretty pleased about that. To me, it kind of showed kind of a nice relationship between the eclipse itself and the people in front of me. I know when we got to the site, to the lakefront area, a lot of people were kind of racing to get to the edge of the lake. And for me, I like to have people in the picture like this because it really sets it in a place. It gives people perspective as to where things are in the sky, how it relates to the Earth. So I kind of hung back, and I was set up behind the row of people that were along the lakefront. And to me, it makes it an interesting picture because you can see people with their tripods, their telescopes, their cameras, viewing and experiencing the eclipse. And the picture also ended up as the lead photo on their in Sky and Telescope for their eclipse report in the August 2024 edition. So this photo for me worked out pretty well. The next kind of major thing that happened in terms of the sky was the aurora in May, and of course I missed the very first day of super bright aurora. And then, so a couple days later, I went up with a friend to Ashokan Reservoir up in the Catskills, where we saw, I guess on a normal weekend, if you went to Ashokan or if you went anywhere outside of the city area of New York and saw this, you'd probably be pretty happy. But considering what people had seen a couple nights before, it was kind of mild. What I was trying to do here is a video. And let's see if this works. Okay, so the very beginning was good, and then it kind of petered out after a while. Although you could see some interesting columns of the aurora as the night went on. What I was mainly doing was, I think the aim was to try and do a star trail along with the aurora, kind of combine it with the aurora, and it sort of worked out. And for me though, I was away from the Northeast region in October, so I completely missed the October aurora. So I won't have any pictures to show you of that, unfortunately. In September, we had a partial lunar eclipse, and I took this from Central Park, which is a place I go for a lot of pictures. And the moon was fairly high in the sky, and something like a lunar eclipse, you could basically take pictures of it from anywhere. You don't need a dark sky to shoot a lunar eclipse, and so to me, Central Park was a great place to shoot it. Jason, you had a question?
A prior photo of the time lapse. How long was that? How many hours?
Oh, okay. Jason asked how long was the time period for this picture? So this is only actually about 36 minutes. I'm looking at my notes here. So 210 frames. So like a total of about 36 minutes. When we got to the reservoir, as we were setting up, the aurora started, and then really within about 45 minutes, it was at a pretty low level. So we kind of caught the peak at the very start, and then it diminished after that. I think a couple nights before it had been active for several hours during the night, or even longer than that. Sure. So back to the eclipse, and I'm pretty sure this is probably a plane either taking off or landing from LaGuardia Airport. You often see them from Central Park if you're looking out toward the east. And so this, I happened to get lucky. The plane came close to where the moon was. It was sort of a high, thin clouds that were over the area that I was shooting from, and so the moon was very kind of fuzzy throughout the night. To me, it kind of adds a little bit to the picture. You could see that it wasn't a very deep eclipse. It was a pretty shallow eclipse. Didn't last too long, but it made an interesting picture. And I think it's like I said, I shoot a fair amount of stuff from the city. I live in Manhattan, and so there are I think a lot of pictures that can be made from there. I was mentioning that I was away in October. In October I was on the Big Island of Hawaii. I had accepted a position as an artist in residence at Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. So I spent the month of October there. And the great thing for this presentation is I was able to use the wrapper that I got around a 6-pack of Kona beer that I picked up when I was there. I thought I always wondered, I was thinking, how can I use this in a presentation? And I thought, oh, this is perfect. I have a really excellent map of Hawaii here. And so most people fly into Oahu and Honolulu. And so this is the big island of Hawaii. And down here, Maui is just north of it. And so this is a great use for the slide. And I'll keep in that theme and zoom in on the big island of Hawaii. So Hawaii Volcanoes National Park is along the southern end. There's a large area, what's called the summit area, and in a smaller, very beautiful area called Kahuku. The summit area is where the lava flow has been happening recently. Unfortunately, it just ended a few nights ago. So it started just before Christmas, and it's been on and off since then. And I keep missing it. I made some friends out there, and they when I left at the end of October, they said, whenever you hear about the volcano erupting, just get on a plane and come out here, and we'll help you find it, help you find locations and stuff. And so I haven't been able to do that, but it's I think be worth seeing some of the lava eruptions at some point. When I was planning this trip, I happened to look at timeanddate.com at the annular eclipse that was going to happen in early October, and I saw this path. And if you look at the red is of course the center line where it would be the annular eclipse along here, and along the land portion of it is in the southern part of South America. But I noticed Hawaiian Islands is in the region of the partial phase. So I looked at some of the details, and it looked like that it'd be about 50% eclipsed, which is pretty good, and that the sun would rise eclipsed by the moon. So there'd be this dramatic rising of the sun. And I figured from at least there'd be a spot somewhere within the park where I could look out to the eastern horizon and actually see the horizon, be able to get the sun coming up partially eclipsed. So to me, that was it'd be an interesting photo. I asked the people in the park if I could come a week early just to scout out some locations, and they said that would be fine. And little did I know that like all these decisions kind of added up to something that would produce even more interesting photos in the long run. So I ended up, I went out to Hawaii September 25th and spent a few days moving in. I was living in a house in a town called Naalehu, which is it's actually at the bottom tip of the Big Island, and it was about a half-hour drive from this very bottom tip here, which is the most southern part of the United States. It's the furthest south you can go in the United States. So that was sort of interesting to see that on my time off. So the few days that I spent exploring the park and finding out a few places, I get a text from my friend Shirag Upreti, who's with the AAA. He says he's texting me pictures that have been taken from Mauna Kea, the volcano where all the observatories are. Some astronomers I've been taking pictures of this comet Tsuchisan Atlas, and they said, "Oh, there's this comet visible from Hawaii." They said, "Can you see it?" And I thought, "Oh, wow!" So I look at Stellarium, and I see that if I wake up early in the morning, the comet's rising at just before 5 a.m. And it's rising, so it'll get higher and higher in the sky as time goes on. But also, the astronomical twilight ends about 5, so it also starts to get light at about just a little bit after that. So there's this sort of race between the twilight and the comet rising in the air. And at that time, I hadn't really scouted out very many locations in the park, so I looked around the area that I was staying, and it's pretty close to the water. So I found a nice vantage point that looked out toward the water, had some nice palm trees, and looked like it would make a nice vantage point to shoot the comet. As you could see along the horizon here, there's some clouds in the early morning, and that for some reason that always seemed to happen either at sunrise or sunset, that there'd be a layer of clouds right near the horizon. Of course, exactly where you wanted to shoot something. And of course, as you could see, a lot of the sky above is pretty clear. So for some reason, the clouds were always right on the horizon. But I went out the next morning at about 4:30, got a spot. I set up a camera to do a sequence of photos. I was going to try to do some sort of a time lapse, but I also realized that if the clouds were too thick, I would just need to be shooting at a constant rate over a period of time to try to get anything. And so one of the frames, a few of the frames actually worked, that all of a sudden you could see the comet and you could actually see it naked eye. So I was surprised to both see it on the camera, but also you could actually see it with your eyes. And so that actually this came out pretty well. I thought, oh, this is pretty amazing. I had a second camera with a telephoto lens, but I'll show you that it sort of looks fairly static. Like here's the comet, and there's the clouds. But I'll show you a time lapse that I did. So this is starting from this is 36 minutes of real time, and it's condensed to a 13-second video. So it starts maybe about 10 or 15 minutes before I actually see the comet. So as you can see, the clouds are moving pretty fast, and you see a little bit of the tail, and you see the comet, and now you don't see the comet. So although it goes by pretty fast in the video, it sort of seemed like that in real time, where I could see it for literally a few minutes, and then that was it. Let me see if I could run this again. Well, so you kind of saw how fast the clouds are moving, and at least from that vantage point, the comet was visible just for a matter of a few minutes, and then the clouds took over. I wanted to show you this frame. This was one of the frames that I was focusing my telephoto lens with. I never delete anything, so I keep everything, and I realized later on this could make an interesting instructional thing. I'm focusing on the stars, and then I focus and shoot a frame, and I check the focus to see if I'm close or if I need to adjust it. And I look at the frame on the back of my camera, and I see this streak of something. I thought, oh man, the sensor, there's something. I must have got dirt or something on the sensor. There's something on there, and I looked a little bit closer, and I thought, oh, that sort of looks like a comet tail. So I kept the camera at that position, and then of course the clouds cleared for, I mean, literally just a couple of minutes, and I managed to get the comet above the clouds, and I actually don't have very many frames because as I'm shooting, of course, the clouds are moving left to right, and as you can see in a couple more minutes, that one cloud is covering the head of the comet. So the next few days, it turned out every other day I could see the comet. I would go out every morning again, since I knew where it was, and I was scouting more locations in the park for the solar eclipse. So now I kind of had a general idea of locations where I could look east, and both for the eclipse, but of course the comet was in the same area that the eclipse was going to be, since it was so close to the sun. So every other day, as it turns out, that there weren't usually there were too many clouds on one day, and then the next day the clouds would be low enough where I could actually see the comet. So in a couple of days, the comet and a crescent moon were rising, and so that made a fairly dramatic shot. And this was a nice location that I found. It's a pull off on something called a chain of craters road, which is a road that goes down through all the major sites that you could see in the park. And if remember this tree right here, this will show up in a picture in a couple minutes. So that made for a pretty dramatic photo as well. And this is more of a vertical shot. The sky at that hour, as it's transitioning into the nautical twilight, often had these amazing display of colors, both kind of this deep blue, and then the more orangish, yellowish color along the horizon. So a couple days later, it's August 2nd, the very morning of the eclipse. So I showed up early to the location I was at because I knew if the clouds cooperated, I could try to shoot the comet again. So I was able to get a similar shot of the comet, and these are all single frames. I didn't really have enough time to do like multiple frames, and it also gave it gave a more realistic view of what you could actually see with your eye or see through binoculars. And at that point, as I'm looking at it on my computer, at least, I realized that the tail was quite long. The first photo I showed you of just the comet, a close-up of the comet, was taken with a 200 millimeter lens. And this is with a 100 millimeter lens, so twice the field of view. And the tail is still going off the top of the frame here. And so it was quite a large tail. And I shot a wider view that same morning, and you could see the comet rising up, but also you could see the tower of zodiacal light. In this is right around the end of astronomical twilight, and from the park, seeing the zodiacal light was actually fairly easy because for all of these locations, you're looking out over the Pacific Ocean, so there's no light pollution out in the ocean that'll interfere with anything. So the seeing things like the zodiacal light was pretty amazing. This particular location that I'm at to shoot the comet, but both at the eclipse, it's just a pull off on one side of the road that has this great view to the east. And to me, it was kind of amazing that I showed up there probably about 4:15 or 4:30 in the morning, and there was nobody there. And so I kind of had the place to myself as I'm shooting the comet. And I took this photo as the eclipse is going on. So I'm set up for the eclipse with a telephoto lens on my tripod there, and then a wide angle lens set up to do a sequence. I told Ken that I'm sort of hiding behind my car here because there was a fairly stiff wind, and so I'm using the car as more or less a windbreak. This was at about just before 7 a.m. After the peak of the eclipse. There was another car that pulled in and parked in front of me that had 5 people in it, and they got there right before the eclipse started, and I started to talk to them, and it turns out that they were from the town. There's a town called Volcano, Hawaii, which is right next to the park, and so they were locals from the area, and so they had a lot. I ended up meeting them several times after that throughout the month, and they taught me a lot about the park and different locations. So that was nice. But they were actually the only other people that stopped at this location. There was a car that stopped, and then the car left. So I don't know why they didn't stop to watch the eclipse, but so it was a great location just in terms of not having to deal with a whole lot of people, and to me, it was a pretty spectacular location for an eclipse. So this is what I saw as the eclipse. I didn't see it coming up from the horizon because there was, of course, the usual band of very low clouds right at the horizon. But as it came up out of the clouds, it was fairly dramatic, as the sun helped light up some of the thinner clouds that was above it along the horizon. And the one picture that I was trying to get was this picture, and you could see this tree looks sort of familiar. It was in the other picture with the comet and the moon. So I was trying to frame the eclipse as it was coming up from above the horizon and through the tree there, and so that worked out fairly good. And then I also did a sequence of the different phases of the eclipse as it was coming up. And the thing that struck me as I put together the sequence was how steep this angle was as the sun is rising up. And the location that I was at, the big island of Hawaii, is at 19 degrees north latitude, so it's pretty south in terms of latitude. And even like as I'm shooting the comet, the time lapse videos that I have of the comet, it's rising almost straight up, and the stars themselves were doing the same in the night, where they would the angle that they were rising was pretty high, since I was pretty far south. So this is October 2nd, and so for the next week or so, it was the next couple days. We tried to see the comet in the morning, but it was pretty difficult. The comet was getting very close to the sun, so in terms of trying to between the clouds along the horizon and being so close to the sun, it was pretty hard to see. So for about the next week and a half, I went into the park at night to shoot photos, as was my plan, and just try to familiarize myself with the different areas of the park. Two friends from the AAA joined me at the house I was staying at, so we'd go into the park every night, and we try to shoot pictures, dealing with various kinds of weather. And around I think the 11th or 12th of November, people were saying, well, the comets come around the sun, and we could you might be able to see it, especially in the northern hemisphere. And so I think I went out October, both the 11th and the 12th, and there were the usual kind of clouds, too thick along the horizon, so I couldn't see that. But on the 13th, I managed to get kind of a few clear views of the comet, and it was quite bright. And as I was looking through the photos and working on them, I realized that there's the anti-tail coming. I didn't know what that was at first, and I kept looking at that. I thought, is that some sort of distortion or some sort of reflection? And then I saw, I think one of the emails, either from AAA or ASLE, people were talking about this anti-tail, and I think somebody had posted a story, maybe from space.com or one of the websites, talking about what this was. And I thought, well, maybe that's what it is, because in terms of when it was supposed to be visible, it matched the dates. This was on October 13th. So that was pretty amazing. And you could see that to me, the landscape at Volcanoes National Park really made for interesting foregrounds. This incredibly dark lava with these amazing shapes, I think, may help make the pictures very, to me, really interesting. And I was kind of shooting the previous picture with a short telephoto lens, and I realized there was a pretty wide picture that would make sense. And this is about, let's see, this is on the 13th, so this is four days before full moon. So it was a pretty big moon out, a pretty big moon already up in the sky after around between 7 and 7:30, as it's getting dark. And so it's kind of a race between these clouds and the comet setting, and also trying to get getting the light balance right. The moon was lighting up the landscape around me, plus the clouds. And I like this picture a lot because it shows the environment a lot more. The trees, these are called the ohia trees. They literally grow out of the lava. They're one of the few kinds of plants that can grow out of lava after a lava flow. And so you see a lot of those types of trees, and the landscape is quite rugged around here. And this is Mauna Loa, the volcano that creates the various lava flows in the park itself. Dave.
Stan, is this one single shot?
Yeah, Dave's question is this one single shot? Yeah, this is one frame, and I think what makes this is that the moon was lighting up the landscape quite a bit. But even with the bright moon, I think because the sky the air itself was quite clear, but also it's in a pretty dark, essentially a dark sky site, that the comet itself showed up pretty well, because the comet itself was bright. Yeah, and you could obviously see stars in the photo. John.
Yeah. Playing off Dave's comment. Yeah, this looks almost like a daytime photo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Multi-layered.
Yeah, I actually.
Waiting for the 6-finger hand.
Yeah.
Like chilling.
Right.
on, you can see though.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
wild.
when it's projected, it actually looks a little bit brighter. I actually made this image a little bit darker for in my computer. If I were to print this, I'd print this a lot darker just because I don't want it to look bright, because I want it to try to look like what I had seen, what I had experienced there. And it was it was kind of eerie to see these clouds. You see this volcanic landscape below, and then the comet just sort of hanging there in the sky. It's pretty wild.
So this was 20 millimeter? 50
Oh,
millimeter?
Oh yeah, what lens did I use for this picture? This was a 25 millimeters. So a wide angle lens. I shot a few with a wider angle lens. The comet gets a little smaller as you go wider. This seemed to be about a good proportion that sort of matched what I saw. I'm sort of running around, well, trying to be careful because the lava itself is quite rough and rugged. So I went from one spot to another to try to frame the comet with the tree, and this spot worked out pretty well. I actually came back to this particular location quite a bit during my trip because it was an area that had this incredible landscape that you could get to pretty easily, and because I'm just parked off the road, just probably maybe 40 or 50 feet from this location. So I was close to my equipment, and then there was also these incredible trees and also the landscape that really made for different kinds of photos. So a couple, let's see, a couple nights later, I was in a part of the park called the Kahuku, which is really interesting. It doesn't have any active lava flow, but it's a very pretty part of the park. It looks very different than the summit area, although it still has it has very dark lava flows, remnants of lava flows. And so this was on October 15th, the night of October 15th. So it's a 97% moon that's up, and just over 24 hours before a full moon. So a pretty bright moon out there. And yet the comet was still pretty visible. So this is sort of like, again, this sort of looks a little bit like a daytime picture on the screen here, but it was, see, do I have the time here? It was probably more like around 7:30 or so. So it was after astronomical twilight, and it was kind of remarkable to see the comet under those conditions. I made the next night, which is just, I mean, this is probably about 4 or 5 hours before full moon. I made a panorama standing inside this crater. This is a cinder cone called Pu'o Lokuana, and it's one that you can climb to the top. It's only a couple hundred feet high, so the trail to the top is not difficult. And then you can also walk back through the cinder cone to the floor of the cinder cone and get these dramatic views from essentially inside the volcano. It's not an active volcano. And so again, this is sort of basically during full moon, and the comet was still visible. Let's see. I'm sorry. Yeah, well, the moon's sort of to the left, because you could see you could see the shadows along here, and then the foreground here is pretty bright.
That's from the moon, or is that because you had the ISO up?
This is from the moon. The moon's especially it's like 99% illuminated, so that's basically a full moon, which lights up everything. You don't see too many stars. You see kind of a little remnants, a little bit of the Milky Way right along here, and then the comet setting in the west. I was looking at each day. I look at different charts. I make a calendar. This is a detail of the calendar that I make. I print out a lot of hard copies of charts and calendars, because in a lot of national parks, once you get away from the visitor center, there's no cell phone coverage, there's no internet. So if you've got apps that need some sort of a connection, they're not going to work when you're out in the wilderness area. Plus, I don't generally like to look at the phone when I'm trying to take pictures in the dark. It kind of ruins your night vision. So using the charts it gets me to where I need to go. I noticed on the evening of the 19th, the moon was going to rise well after astronomical twilight. So then I started looking at different charts, thinking this could make a more interesting picture of the comet. It's funny, the sky and telescope chart was good if you're around 30 to 40 degrees north latitude, but the actual position of the comet was for Hawaii was a few days actually earlier, so it'd be lower in the sky than appeared in a chart like this. So I looked at Stellarium and found that just after 7 Hawaii time, that the comet would be fairly high in the sky, and of course there'd be Venus, which would be almost setting, and then the Milky Way. And I thought, well, that'd be a great picture, because kind of show these 3 different elements. But if the moon were up, you really wouldn't be able to see it very well, except for starting on the 19th, the moon would be rising later and later, and so that on the 19th, I would probably have maybe a half an hour before the glow of the moon, even below the horizon, a fairly big moon starts to light up the sky. So I met up with one of the people that I met at the solar eclipse, who lives near the park, and he knew a lot of different areas. And so we went to an area that had these things called lava trees. And so that early in the evening, this is right after 7 o'clock. It all worked out. The sky was clear, which was great. No clouds on the horizon. And so I was able to get the comet, Venus, and the Milky Way all in one shot. The foreground objects are these things called lava trees, and it's the remnants. What happens when a lava field comes through an area, it'll wrap around a tree, and eventually the tree will die. But what's left is this essentially a cone of lava that used to be the tree. And if that lava remnant breaks open, you can actually see the bark of the tree, an impression of the bark of the tree. It's almost like a mold of the tree. So it's they're interesting artifacts that are left over on some of these lava fields. So for the next few days, it was great. The moon was rising later and later, so it was a fairly dark sky until the moon rose, and so I could go to different locations and see different views of the comet and the Milky Way with the different kinds of landscape features that I had found over the several weeks that I had been there at the park. So that was great to be able to return to some places and photograph the comet in these areas. The one thing I did notice after looking at some of the pictures, usually the next day or a few days later, was oftentimes there'd be a huge number of satellites right near the comet, and it didn't matter like what altitude the comet was at. And I don't know if anybody knows why there'd be a lot of satellites in that particular position, but this is just one frame out of a series that I shot. I did this GIF that kind of shows you this. This is about 8 frames, and there's just a ton of satellites that go through there. It was very odd. I'm not sure if there's what the answer to that would be.
Stan?
It's
Okay.
it's a
Stan, I was
train.
can you hear me, Stan?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, when I was doing the daytime comet the other day, 2024 G3 Atlas, during the day, I had my videos, and there's 1 million satellites in the daytime going past the comet.
Oh, okay.
And the only thing I can think of in your case is it's where the sun is, right? If the sun just set, you get a lot of reflectivity. So,
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know.
I'll go to a video that I did.
So sorry, you also get maybe you're lucky and you get a Starlink train, and you have exactly this, like several, it's like rockets flying one after the other.
Oh, sorry, George, what was that?
You can get a Starlink train. So if they're launched and just a few days ago, then they have not dispersed yet. So they come like this one after the other.
Yeah, I'm not sure if any of these were Starlink because they just seem to be individual satellites just happening to be clustered near the comet. And John?
And it's
Don't,
no-
don't forget, it's taken right after sunset.
Right.
That's why you have a lot of satellites being reflected off of the sun.
They're
Right.
they're not necessarily
Up and
clustered
forward.
around the comet. You're pointing at the comet and you only see that.
Right, but it was they actually didn't appear in other parts of the sky. But maybe it did have to do with the reflectivity. John
Ye-
asked which way north is, and well, I'm looking almost due west, and so north would be to the right.
So I'm trying, it's weird that there are satellites going in both directions.
Yeah. Well, let me show you this next video. So this is a wider shot, and I zoom in to where the comet is. And there are quite a few here. And I mean, they're really kind of a dense amount right near where the comet is.
We're gonna get Blue Horizons when we send them up too.
Yeah, here's the this is a blend of, I think, 8 images where I've used 8 frames from the sequence you just saw as the comet's getting pretty close to the horizon, and there's all these multiple.
Those might be geostationary satellites.
Well, except they're streaks, so they're moving.
That is where the sun had just set fire,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
that's
probably. Yeah, pretty close.
reflecting
But-
that
but
area.
These satellites are all going in the same exact direction.
Yeah. Yes. So it was puzzling. It's odd to see this. I mean, I hadn't. If generally, if you shoot toward a particular area of the sky, you don't see more or less satellites. It's usually pretty evenly spread out. Let's see. Back to New York City. This was at the end of December. I went out with a few friends over to Hoboken, and we were trying to shoot the 4 of the planets that were visible in the sky. And this is it's a wide panorama, so the planets themselves are pretty small, but we were able to, you could visually see all 4 of these. And this is from a pier in Hoboken, and we were able to get a view of here's the Empire State Building in Midtown, and then Lower Manhattan right over here. And so and of course the sky is not terribly dark, pretty bright actually. So the planets themselves are pretty minimized. I did a annotation with all the various constellations. It kind of helps you figure out which way you're looking. And we could actually see, we didn't see a whole lot of stars, but different parts of the sky actually look a little bit darker than others, and it kind of shows up in this panorama where you see where the light is concentrated, and then in between those, the sky is slightly darker, but of course not as great as if you're in a place like Hawaii.
Stan, did you take it from the New Jersey side?
Yeah, this is from Hoboken. There's a couple nice piers that go out into the river in Hoboken. And so they give you great vantage points of especially looking toward Manhattan. Was I able to park there? We all took public transportation, but there is parking pretty close to a lot of these piers. And I know that we were talking about the Mars occultation. I was in at Jersey City, which is right next to Hoboken, and there's a couple of garages there as well, right near where the waterfront. So it's fairly easy to get there if you have a car as well. There's also 2 paths New Jersey Pass stations. Newport is one of them, and Hoboken is the other that gets you within walking distance of the piers, and so that's a good alternative. That's the way I got there. My final slide, I told Ken I'll cheat a little bit and I'll go into a couple days into 2025. And so this is on January 13th. I was photographing the Mars occultation. So I did this composite of 26 frames with Mars disappearing and then reappearing on the other side of the moon. And this was shot from Jersey City. A friend and I went to photograph the moonrise earlier in the evening, then we just hung around and shot the occultation. Jason?
Just luck of the draw, I noticed that many of these series seem to be 26 shots. Does it just time out like that?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, we actually kind of got there a little bit late, so I started the series was over. I think I shot a little bit more on the ingress side than the egress side, but after we were shooting for a few minutes on the egress side, I just decided that, well, we decided that was enough. We didn't really need more pictures. I know some people had shot like for a couple hours on each side.
When the occultation occurred, did you keep shooting? Or you stopped and then waited an hour and started again?
Oh yeah, Jason asked about when the occultation occurred. Did we keep shooting? And no, we actually went to a bar to get a drink because we figured for about an hour and 15 minutes there wasn't a whole lot to see except the moon.
The polar axis. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It looks like an axis of the moon, and then so we timed it so then we got out a few minutes before the egress, and then managed to see it as it came up the top of the moon from our vantage point. And if after the night, if anybody has any further questions, you can always email me through my website, or I'm also on Instagram and Facebook, and you could message me through there if you want. But I'll take any questions if people have any. Yes.
And if you ever got up to Mount Cat.
Oh, I did, not at night though. Went up to the visitor center just because I wanted to see it, and I wanted to see the I think just we didn't get up to the observatory level, but the visitor center level, and that was definitely worth the drive to go up there. But I definitely want to get up to the observatory level and try to shoot some pictures at night from up there.
Oh, great pictures. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
When you travel, like when you go out to Hawaii, how many cameras do you typically take with you and what lenses?
For this trip, I took a lot, maybe a little bit too much. But one reason I was preparing for an eclipse, so I took my long lens, a Sony 200 to 600 millimeter, and then I had 3 cameras. I have a Sony the A7R3, and I have 2 A7S3s, and the A7S3s I use a lot for the night photography because it's a really good camera for night stuff. The R3 I was using partly for mostly for the eclipse to shoot with the longer lens, and then so I had those 3 cameras, the long lens, and then I had a shorter zoom, like a 16 to 25 millimeter zoom, mostly for the night stuff, a 2870 and a 70 to 200 for sort of general pictures, and then a 14 millimeter and an 18 millimeter lens for mostly for the night stuff. So it seems like, and then of course all the things you got to carry around, the little accessories. Other ones I tried to keep at a minimum, but it always, for a longer trip like this, I end up taking probably more than I should, but you often need a lot of things. And because I was actually on the Big Island for 5 weeks, so I was there for quite a while, and so I I had made a couple of different plans of what I wanted to do, what I wanted to shoot. So as it turns out, I pretty much I think I used everything that I took, which is good. I'd rather do that than have things that I didn't use, but it seemed to work out pretty good.
So, sorry, so another
Yep.
follow-up on that is, so you're flying, so how do you pack and carry the stuff so it doesn't get lost and damaged on
Oh,
the airlines?
Well, equipment I carry with me. So I have a backpack that I'll carry the cameras, the shorter lenses, and my computer. And then I've got so I have a backpack that's a little bit bigger than this that I'll carry the cameras and lenses. And then I have a tote bag that I'll often put a few things so the tote bag will go under the seat and the backpack will go overhead. In my clothes bag, I'll put tripods and stuff that won't break, basically. And so I usually carry a larger tripod and a smaller tripod. And then I've got this tiny tripod, which is great, like a ground level tripod that I'll just put in my tote bag. And I've kind of worked out the system that we used when I was with Agency France Press. With the wire service, oftentimes you got to travel with a lot of equipment, and we would actually ship lenses through FedEx, and which I think to us was safer than packing an extra suitcase, because FedEx isn't going to open a box to inspect it. I mean, unless they see something suspicious, because they often X-ray boxes. But if it's just camera equipment, they're not going to really care. So I'll FedEx a box to myself with camera equipment, and I did FedEx the big lens, this 200 to 600, and I just packed it with both a case, but also I put clothes all around it, so I had fewer clothes to pack. But and that usually works out pretty good.
Thank you.
Sure. Yes.
Great work, Stan. Quick question. Do you, is there that one opportunity that got away from you that you could tell us about? You know, the horror story side of something you once tried?
Oh, let's see. There's probably a lot of those. There's one thing that did happen was, let's see, I shot the annular eclipse in October of 2022, I think. Is that 22 or 23? 2023. That went through the Southwest. And I usually have my camera on manual focus so that the focus won't slip. And somehow, I think on one end of the eclipse, it was either the front end or the back end, the focus slipped. So I have a lot of a perfect row of suns during the different partial phases that they're all a little fuzzy. And so I've got some nice sharp ones on one side and then fuzzy ones on the other side. So that there's nothing I could do about that. And well, I was in Hawaii in October, and I'm seeing all these. I'm with some friends who also have friends and family on the East Coast, and they're saying, "Wow, look at all these aurora pictures that people are getting." So of course everybody here they were seeing aurora in the middle of New York City at night. So I did miss out on that, and then so that would have been fun, I think, to be here during that weekend. Frank.
When you went to Hawaii, you stay at the Big Island the whole time?
Yeah, Frank's question was, when I went to Hawaii, did I stay on the Big Island? Yeah, I was there the whole time. And so I flew into Hilo and flew out of Kona. But I was, in the basically